Sweeter Than Revenge. Episode 8. Private venue hall, night. The hall glittered under the golden chandelier lights, their amber glow reflecting off the polished marble floors as soft music hummed in the background. Near the decorated stage, Jimin and Taehyung stood close, their fingers gently intertwined as they shared a soft, tentative smile. Nice meeting you, Taehyung said warmly, his gaze searching Jimin's face. Same here, Jimin replied, his lips curving into a polite smile, though his eyes remained guarded. Before the moment could linger any longer, a hand suddenly slid between theirs. Jin stepped in calmly, separating their hands with a fluid, effortless motion. He looked at Taehyung and smiled, but the expression was sharp, the warmth not quite reaching his eyes. I'm borrowing Jimin for a while, Jin said smoothly, his voice laced with an underlying authority. Without waiting for a response, Jin gently but firmly pulled Jimin away. Taehyung stood frozen, confusion clouding his face as he watched them disappear into the crowd. Borrowing. The way Jin said it, it sounded as if Jimin belonged to Taehyung. As if Jimin was something precious. Something already claimed. On the other side, the baby rested peacefully in Namjoon's arms. He watched Jin and Jimin walk away together, their heads bowed in quiet conversation. To the other guests, it looked perfectly normal, just two friends catching up. But Namjoon wasn't blind, he could sense the shift in the air. There was something unspoken between Jin and Jimin. A secret, a tension, a truth waiting to surface that seemed to involve the very child he was holding. Still, Namjoon remained silent, his grip on the baby steady. He trusted Jin implicitly. When the time was right, Jin would tell him, and until then he would wait. The far corner of the hall, night. The glittering lights of the celebration felt a million miles away in the shadowed corner where Jin had cornered Jimin. The upbeat music was a dull thrum against the suffocating tension between them. When are you going to tell him? Jin's voice was a low, dangerous blade. Jimin's gaze dropped to the floor, his fingers twisting nervously. Not now, Hung, not now, Jin snapped, his composure finally fracturing. What do you mean not now? First, you said you'd tell him after he returned from abroad. And now, why are you refusing again? Jimin swallowed hard, his voice trembling. In his life, the excuse was the final straw. Jin's hand flew up in a flash of raw frustration, the movement so sudden and violent he almost struck Jimin. From across the room, Namjoon and Taehyung saw the motion. Panic surged through them. They immediately began weaving, their hearts racing as they approached the two men. What do you mean by his life? Jin continued, his jaw clenched in fury. Where is your life, Jimin? Where is your child's life? You only think about him. You don't even realize what he has done to you. Jin, Namjoon's voice cut through the air like a siren. What happened? Why were you about to hit Jimin? Jin didn't answer. He was breathing in jagged, heavy bursts, his eyes burning as they stayed locked on Jimin. Jimin, meanwhile, stared down at his own trembling hands, the weight of the secret finally crushing the air out of his lungs. Namjoon and Taehyung looked at Jimin with a mixture of deep concern and pity, sensing the agonizing burden he was carrying. After a long, suffocating silence, Jimin let out a shaky breath. Without a single word, he reached out and took the baby gently from Namjoon's arms. He turned and walked away into the night, his silhouette disappearing through the grand doors. Namjoon and Taehyung hesitated, rooted to the spot. Should they stop him, or let him go? Before they could decide, Jin let out a sharp, pained exhale and turned toward Namjoon. But suddenly the world tilted. The golden lights of the hall began to blur and spin. The ceiling seemed to drop, and the sounds of the party faded into a high-pitched ring. Jin's knees buckled as his body went limp. Jin, Namjoon reacted with a speed born of pure instinct, lunging forward to catch him just inches before he hit the marble floor. Taehyung and Jungkook froze in absolute shock. Without wasting another second, Namjoon swept Jin into his arms, his face pale with terror. He ignored the gasps of the remaining guests as he rushed toward the exit. Taehyung followed close behind, his heart pounding against his ribs. Something was very, very wrong. Outside the hotel, night. The transition from the golden warmth of the ballroom to the biting, cold night air was jarring. The celebration had evaporated, replaced by a frantic, suffocating reality. Namjoon held Jin tightly against his chest, his knuckles white as he moved with a desperation that bordered on panic. Taehyung moved ahead, pulling open the car door with trembling hands, while Jungkook stood frozen by the curb, his wide eyes reflecting the harsh glare of the streetlights. Hung, what happened to him? Jungkook's whisper was thin, barely audible over the distant hum of city traffic. Namjoon didn't answer. His focus was singular. He carefully lowered Jin into the back seat. His hand shook as he brushed a stray lock of hair from Jin's pale forehead. Just as Taehyung was about to close the door, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed across the pavement. Hung, Jimin rushed toward them, his breath hitching in the cold air. Namjoon's head snapped up. In that moment, the grief in his eyes sharpened into something much darker fury. The memory of the hushed argument in the corner, the raised hand, and the hidden tension flooded back. You know something about Jin, don't you? Namjoon said, his voice low and vibrating with a terrifying intensity. Jimin stopped in his tracks, his body going rigid. Beside the car, Taehyung and Jungkook exchanged a look of pure dread. Namjoon hung, this is not the time, Taehyung started, reaching out to calm the situation. Tell me the truth, Jimin. Namjoon's voice cracked, a raw, jagged sound. What are you hiding? Is this why Jin was angry? Is this why he collapsed? Jungkook stepped closer to Taehyung, his fingers interlacing with his partner's for support. Namjoon's eyes were rimmed with red, the sheer weight of 10 years of devotion pouring out as fear. He is my whole life, Jimin. Do you understand that? If something happens to him. His voice broke completely, a sob catching in his throat. Jimin stood his ground, even with his own heart racing against his ribs, even with the truth burning like acid in the back of his throat, he remained a wall of silence. Not this secret, not tonight. He stepped closer to the car, his voice soft but unfalteringly steady. Trust me, Namjoon hung. Namjoon stared at him, his breathing heavy and ragged, searching Jimin's face for a flicker of a lie. But Jimin's gaze was clear, honest and resolute. Jin is perfectly alright, just believe me. Jimin continued gently, his eyes never wavering. The night felt impossibly heavy, the silence between them thick enough to choke on. After a long, agonizing moment, the tension in Namjoon's shoulders seemed to give way to exhaustion. Jimin stepped back slowly. Nothing would never happen to him, he said quietly, a vow that seemed to hang in the air long after he spoke. Without another word, Jimin turned away. He walked away from there, his silhouette growing smaller until he vanished. Jungkook watched him go, a deep sense of unease settling in his gut, while Taehyung remained silent, Jungkook's hand still tight in Taehyung's. Namjoon sat in the car, the door finally closing. He looked down at Jin's unconscious face, feeling as though his entire world were made of glass, slipping slowly through his fingers. Yoongi's house, bedroom. The mansion was a tomb of expensive shadows and heavy silence. Yoongi lay on his back, the silk sheets cool against his skin, staring at the ceiling as if the patterns in the plaster held the answers to his fractured life. The rhythmic click of the bedroom door opening didn't startle him. He didn't even flinch. Only one person moved with that predatory, silent grace. You're not welcome here, Yoongi said, his voice flat and cold, directed at the empty air above him. Hoseok stepped into the room, his presence immediately sucking the oxygen out of the space. He didn't apologize. He didn't leave. And who is going to stop me? He replied, his tone conversational, almost pleasant. Yoongi remained still, a statue of redirected pride. Hoseok stood at the foot of the bed, his shadow stretching long and thin over Yoongi's body. The silence stretched from seconds into suffocating minutes. Have you eaten anything? Hoseok finally asked, the mundane question sounding jarring in the dark. Yoongi let out a sharp, bitter scoff. Why are you here? You're supposed to be at Namjoon Hung's surprise proposal for Jin. Hoseok's eyebrows shot up, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his features. Proposal? He didn't inform me. Yoongi slowly turned his head, his eyes meeting Hoseok's for the first time. They were glassy, emotionless. He didn't inform you. He messaged me, after you left me at the reunion hall. Hoseok blinked, the realization dawning. Oh, my phone is broken, because of those bastards. Yoongi's gaze sharpened, cutting through the gloom. If your phone wasn't broken, you would have been there, right? His voice was a fragile thread, ready to snap. Hoseok sighed, the truth inevitable. Yes, because Namjoon Hung and Jin Hung are my friends, too. Yoongi looked away, the rejection stinging more than the physical marks on his body. He muttered. Sit down. Why are you still standing? And you still haven't answered me. Why did you really come? I just came to see you, but I think you're in a dark mood, Hoseok murmured. He reached for the wall, and with a sharp click, the overhead lights flooded the room with a clinical, white glare. Yoongi flinched, immediately rolling onto his side to hide his face from the brightness. You can't always be someone's sunshine, Hoseok. Hoseok stepped closer, a faint, deceptive smile touching his lips. You're right, but at least I can be sunshine for the one who needs me. Yoongi turned back, looking at him with a weary skepticism. I know how much of a word twister you are. Hoseok chuckled, a light, airy sound that didn't reach his eyes. Don't say my secrets out loud. Walls have ears. Why did you really come? Yoongi pressed, searching for a shred of the man he thought he knew. Nothing, I just missed you, Hoseok answered without a second of hesitation. Yoongi rolled his eyes, a small part of his guard crumbling under the weight of his own loneliness. He sat up slowly, the mattress creaking. Fine, and, I'm sorry, I was an asshole at the reunion hall. Hoseok's smile softened into something that looked like forgiveness. I already forgave you. That's why I came. Yoongi hesitated, then gently patted the empty space beside him. Hoseok walked over, the weight of his body sinking into the bed as he sat. Without another word, Yoongi reached out, pulling Hoseok into a desperate, crushing hug. He buried his face in Hoseok's shoulder, finally letting go of the breath he had been holding all night. Don't ever leave me, Yoongi whispered into the fabric of Hoseok's jacket. Hoseok wrapped his arms around Yoongi, his touch firm. He didn't say a word. He didn't promise to stay. And Yoongi, lost in the relief of the embrace, couldn't see the expression on Hoseok's face. He couldn't see the cold, calculating light in his eyes or the small, evil smirk that slowly curved Hoseok's lips. Hospital, outside the examination room. The hospital corridor was a tunnel of sterile white light and suffocating silence. Namjoon sat on a metal chair, his elbows dug into his knees and his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Taehyung leaned against the far wall, his arms crossed over his chest, his usual composure replaced by visible anxiety. Jungkook couldn't stay still, his footsteps echoing as he paced the length of the hallway. He just fainted. It can't be that serious, right? Jungkook muttered, his voice bouncing off the cold walls. Namjoon didn't answer. His entire existence was narrowed down to the closed door in front of him. After what felt like an eternity, the handle turned. The doctor stepped out, his expression calm as he looked over a medical file. Namjoon was on his feet instantly. Doctor, how is he? The doctor offered a small, reassuring nod. He's fine. It was just stress and exhaustion. His blood pressure dropped slightly, which caused the syncopal episode. Namjoon's shoulders slumped as the first wave of relief hit him. But the doctor didn't move away. The doctor's gaze turning serious, but, there is something important you should know. Namjoon's heart, which had just begun to steady, tightened painfully again. What is it? The doctor looked at him carefully, as if measuring the weight of the news he was about to deliver. Mr. Kim Seokjin is pregnant. The world stopped. Taehyung froze against the wall, his breath hitching in his throat. Jungkook stopped mid-pace, his mouth slightly agape as he stared at the doctor. Namjoon simply stood there, his mind reeling, unable to process the 4 words that had just shattered his reality. Pregnant, he repeated softly, the word feeling foreign and impossible on his tongue. Behind the closed door, Jin lay resting in the dim light of the room, completely unaware that the secret he and Jimin had been guarding had finally surfaced. In a single sentence, the foundation of Namjoon's world had shifted. The anger he felt toward Jimin, the confusion of the night, the proposal he had planned, everything was suddenly eclipsed by a new, terrifying, and beautiful truth. To be continued.